Today is September 11th, 2017. I've been trying to figure out what to upload today because personally I don't know that I have any revolutionary thoughts or insights into the events of September 11th, but it also feels strange to just upload something that's kind of goofy and out of place. I read an article earlier today that linked to several audio files that had people's phone calls from inside the Twin Towers as they were burning and collapsing. And that stuff's really hard to read and hear and see, but I think that it is really important because it's so easy to put that stuff 16 years in the past. And it's so easy with any tragic event to lose sight of the human component. And I think that's very important not to forget. I work with high school students in grades 9 through 12. And so even the oldest students, the 12th graders, the oldest 12th graders were born in late 1999, early 2000. So today, most high school students were born after September 11th. And if you're born after an event, it doesn't really matter if it's a week or 50 years. It becomes so far out of your frame of reference because it was before you existed. And one of the things that always comes to my mind is the dichotomy that September 11th represents. It is an example of the absolute worst of humanity. Not only the event itself and the terrorist attacks themselves, but even the time afterwards, the wars and the violence and the bigotry and the hatred and the division. But it's also a good example of the absolute best that humanity has to offer. The unity and the compassion and the kindness and the fact that when there was chaos and confusion, there were strangers who were willing to run directly towards the chaos and confusion to help save other complete strangers. And that's the human component. Any event where there's tragedy involved. And personally, even though I'm not from New York City, I love New York City. It's one of my favorite places in the entire world. And the dichotomy of September 11th, 2001 is really well represented in the 9/11 Memorial in New York City and in the Freedom Tower, the New World Trade Center. The 9/11 Memorial is, in my opinion, a perfect memorial because it's breathtakingly beautiful. It's unbelievably impactful and tragic. And if you're just there and you're present and you let yourself be there, it can be a really transformative experience. But in addition to its beauty, it's also haunting because there's just the two massive pits in the middle of one of the busiest cities in the world. And despite all the noise and the crowds and the hustle and bustle of the city, there's this emptiness. Something is absolutely missing and has been taken. But right next to the memorial is the new Freedom Tower. This is one of my favorite pictures that I've ever taken, and there's nothing particularly special about it. There are probably 10,000 pictures that look exactly like this, but I took this picture the first time I went to New York City after the Freedom Tower had been completed. When I took this photo, it was negative 22 degrees outside, so it was an entirely new level of pain, unlike anything I had experienced before. But the first time I saw the Freedom Tower, I became kind of obsessed with it because I just found it so beautiful and inspiring. And I mean, architecturally, I think that it's genuinely a magnificent building. But more importantly, the Freedom Tower represents what can be accomplished when people come together and unite and build rather than destroy. And at its most fundamental level, it represents life because life happens in it. Just the daily grind of businesses and work and daily life take place in a location where that had been taken away for so long. And even though it's right next to the 9/11 Memorial, the feeling inside the Freedom Tower is entirely different. Because as soon as you walk in, there's a sense of optimism and joy and celebration. And that brings me back to the idea of the human element, which is even if I or you weren't personally affected by September 11th, 2001, all of the people who were in those buildings and on those flights were you and me, or could have been you and me. And it drives home the idea that time is limited, but it's there to be used however you see fit. And so I'll end today by sharing a quote with you from Seneca that kind of encapsulates this idea, which is something that always weighs heavily on my mind, but even more so on a day like today, where I think it's important to stop and reflect and really absorb the emotion and the impact of the situation. And I'd also like to say from the absolute bottom of my heart that I truly wish nothing but the best for everybody. And one of my favorite words in the English language is unity, because when people come together, there is no greater thing in the entire world. And so if there's any way to embrace that or promote it or even think about it, I think that's a good thing. And I think it's a really worthwhile thing. So I'll leave you with this quote by Seneca and wish you nothing but unity and the ability to use your time in the best possible way.